I'm here at the Cranesville swamp, right over the border of Western Maryland and into West Virginia. And here we are going to see some carnivorous plants. And if you're not familiar, they actually eat bugs to get their nutrients that they need instead of getting it from the soil or the media that they live in. And then we're hoping to see a few salamanders as well. But stay tuned for some good stuff. This here is a Sarracenia purpurea, or the purple pitcher plant. And this is a species of carnivorous plant, if you're not familiar with pitcher plants. And they have a very neat mechanism for catching insects. And the reason that they catch insects is because they live in this environment that's called a bog. And it is full of this moss here, and this type of moss is called sphagnum moss. And even right here, there's a few different species of it. You can see there's different colors, but it's very acidic and it's low nutrients, so there's not really many good nutrients in the soil for the plants, and they need to get their nitrogen somehow. So they get their nitrogen from digesting bugs with enzymes. And you can see that these plants have like a cup. Oh, look, and there's some kind of big insect right inside there. So yeah, it looks like it caught a horsefly. That's pretty cool. But you can see it's a cup, and right here on the rim here, which is called the peristome, it's covered in this really good smelling, or at least to the bugs, it smells really good. It's a nectar. And when the bugs land on here, they start to eat that nectar, and it actually makes them become a little dizzy, and then they will sometimes crawl into this lid, and you can see it's covered in downward facing hairs, and then the bugs will fall into this pitcher plant, and then the sides are coated with wax and more downward facing hairs, and they just can't get out, and then they drown and they get digested by these amazing plants. And they're pretty cool. They're really pretty looking. And this is one of the only pitcher plants that's native to North America that actually remains throughout the winter. So it goes dormant, but it doesn't lose all of its traps in the winter. They can actually withstand the cold a little bit, and they'll last about a year and a half, whereas other pitcher plants will die back every year and then regrow as a regular perennial would. But you can see here, this is a new trap that hasn't opened yet. And then these ones are good to go, catching bugs. All that bright color on them helps them attract more insects. But when you come to these bogs, these are some rare plants, but as a lot of these salamanders that are very rare at spots like this, the plants are very abundant, as those salamanders are when you can find them. But you can see they're just all over the place. These here are called Drosera intermedia, or the Spoonleaf Sundew. This is another species of carnivorous plant that lives here at the Cranesville swamp. And you can see that this one actually just caught a bug. Now, well, it looks like that bug might actually make it out of the trap, but we'll watch while I'm teaching a little bit about this plant. So you can see that there's these little kind of hair-like structures on the end of the leaves there, and they're covered in this good smelling nectar similar to that of the pitcher plant that we just saw. And it's very sticky, and it also has digestive enzymes in it. So when a bug lands on them that is small enough, it will get stuck and then can't get off, and it just gets digested right there on the leaf. So they're pretty neat. There's one other species of sundew that grows in this bog as well that I'll show in a few minutes once I find one. But they like it a little bit drier. This species of sundew, as you can see, is growing in the water for the most part. So they like it a little bit more wet than the others. But all three of the carnivorous plants that we're gonna see today prefer it wet in general, and they cannot dry out completely or they will die. So that is part of the reason why they live in these bogs, because they're full of water. It's basically just a big field full of this sphagnum moss that you can see everywhere, and it's full of water. So if you come out and step on it, it's pretty neat because it's like real squishy. But that's the Spoonleaf Sundew for you. And as you all know, I do love my ferns, and here's a species of fern that I haven't showed on the channel yet. It's called a Bracken Fern. They're pretty easy to identify because they have these real big leaves with these tall stalks on them, or the stipe. And that's what this part of the stem here is called. It's called the stipe. But they have these irregular shaped pinnules on them that they vary a lot, and they have a very triangular shape on them when you look at them. And there's a lot of them here. You can see there's a bunch of bracken ferns all around me. So that's just another fern ID for you. This is the other species of sundew that I mentioned before, and this is known as Drosera rotundifolia, or the round leaf sundew. And as you can see, this one has much more of a disc-shaped leaf than a spoon leaf like the spoonleaf sundew does. And this one has the same mechanism as catching and digesting bugs or insects as the spoonleaf sundew and all other sundews. It's got those sticky hairs off of the leaf with that nectar on it. And as you can see, this one isn't growing directly in the water, but it is still in that moist sphagnum moss. And there's a few of them here. There's another. And they kind of just grow all around. There's another one. What's interesting is their flower stalks grow very tall. And the reason for that is they don't want to catch their pollinators in their trap, because if they do, then they won't get pollinated. So if their flower stalk is, here's another one, if their flower stalk is super high and away from their trap, then it's the hope of the plant, not that it can think, but that's what the idea is that the bugs are flying up here and will pollinate the different flowers and not get caught down there in the trap. Here is an eastern redback salamander I just uncovered. That classic red stripe on the back. Here's another eastern redback salamander I just uncovered. I thought this would be a good opportunity to share a little bit of knowledge about if you're gonna go out into the wild and you're gonna look for salamanders and things under logs. You should be respectful of the environment as much as you can. And this is something that a lot of people wouldn't think about, but you can see where I lifted this log up. The environment under the log is different than the environment in the surrounding area. So when you flip over a log, whether you find something or not, so you want to make sure that you don't smush the salamander, obviously. So you want to make sure that you coerce them out of the bottom of the log area. And then when you're done looking under said log, you want to place it back where it was exactly, because the environment under that log takes a long time to form. And when you uncover a log and leave it uncovered, then that whole environment and habitat for whatever was living under there or could potentially live under there is lost. So just a little tip, if you're flipping logs, that's great. I love it when people come out and are curious about nature, but just make sure you always flip them back. Same thing goes for rocks or anything else. Here is a young Plethodon glutinosus, or the northern slimy salamander. And next to it, under the same log, is another redback. It's always a treat when you get two different species under the same log.